One of the things that we have been trying repeatedly to address is this belief that insurers know what consumers want, as opposed to allowing people to work out for themselves what they want, but creating optionality and giving people flexibility and enabling them to change and change frequently, which is something that does not exist in the insurance space. Yeah. It's very much in our agenda. Hi, I'm Steven Mendel from ManyPets, and this is the future of insurance.
Steve, it's great to sit down with you and to have you expanding the way that you have. When we got our cat, you weren't yet in my state, but that has changed.
We are now.
Yes, and our renewal is coming, so we are looking. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yes.
I'd love to hear briefly about yourself, and then let's talk about ManyPets. But who are you?
That's much more interesting than talking about me, I can assure you.
Well, tell us about your background a bit.
So my background is I'm an actuary by profession. I originally started as a pensions actuary and then became an investment actuary. Went to McKinsey for 6 years. And then after that, I was what is now called an entrepreneur, but I don't think it was called that at the time, and built 3 businesses for 3 large corporates, effectively building these things from scratch. The first was part of the team that built Barclays Wealth, then a private bank for Christie, the auction house, and then the third was building a wealth management business in the UK for Close Brothers. From whence I left to go and do it on my own, having learned how to do it on somebody else's cost base.
Yeah. Did you feel that desire the whole time, or did that even not cross your mind?
It wasn't that I felt the desire the whole time, but I was on a bit of a rinse and repeat cycle.
Yeah.
So 1 year of planning, 1 year of building, 1 year of running it and finding somebody to take it over, start again.
Move on and do the next. Yeah. You wanted to do it for yourself.
And in fact, it was my wife who said, like, you've just got to stop doing this. This is not helping anyone get anywhere in life.
Did she realize what she was pushing you to do, to break out and do it on your own?
Well, she said, no, she very much was, but she gave me a year to do it.
Okay.
And I'm still living on borrowed time.
Yeah, yeah.
10 years later.
It seems like you were less on the insurance side and more on the sort of financial services, wealth, asset management, banking sort of space.
Yeah. So I mean, other than being an actuary, and being a McKinsey consultant, I did a lot of work in insurance, but I never worked for an insurance company per se. And that was intentional.
So was it intentional then to start an insurance company?
Yes, because one of the reasons that I had never wanted to work in insurance is because it was always done terribly. And in particular, I was always very frustrated with the way in which large-scale financial corporates took advantage of individuals in a way that they never took advantage of other financial corporates or other corporates in general. So there are many examples of where individuals get taken advantage of in financial services, which corporates would not. Group life is a good example of that. Costs a tiny fraction of individual life insurance. Group health insurance. In investment management, unit trusts and are much cheaper as a corporate investor than they are as individuals. Now, there are some core reasons why there should be a difference in price, but nothing that explains the actual difference in price.
Yeah.
And so I felt it was time to address that imbalance.
So how did you land on, I want to know how you landed on the pet insurance space, but
that was
and we need to understand, what it is that you built.
So what I had wanted to do was to find some way of redressing this imbalance. And I was talking to my then CTO at Close Brothers about leaving and going to do something different. And he said that he was also thinking of leaving and doing something different. And he had been spending his long commutes into the city of London building some software that would operate inside Facebook that enabled people to group together. In fact, he was going to use it for sharing skiing expenses and ideas of fanatical skier.
Okay.
And I was just very interested in the insurance space because it had not changed for decades, if not longer.
Yeah.
And that felt odd. I'd done a fair bit of innovation in wealth management and in investment management, but nothing in insurance, because there was nothing going on in insurance. This is before the expression insurtech.
I was going to ask, what's the timing?
So this is 2011, end of 2011, beginning of 2012.
Okay. Yes.
And and we kicked about a bunch of ideas, And we both left close brothers and kind of working as consultants to try and work out exactly what we wanted to do. And we alighted on this idea of building communities inside insurance to help individuals who had niche insurance needs get access to better insurance than they would have been able to on their own.
So sort of a distribution idea in a sense.
Yeah, a kind of like a communal idea of building these communities using search and social tools. And we wanted these communities to engage with each other. We wanted them to discuss their issues with each other, partly about insurance, but also kind of any other issues that they might have.
Yeah.
And to think as a group that we wanted them to operate as a group, and we would facilitate that process. Our agenda was to help them get better insurance, where we defined better as something about price, something about product, and something about customer experience.
Were you thinking about creating the product in that, or having it be sort of a self-insured kind of thing, or you were saying to access products that were on the market?
Right. So at the time, we were what is now called a digital broker, but it wasn't known of that then. And our agenda was really just to go out to insurance companies and to negotiate on behalf of these communities to get them access to this kind of 3 dimensions of better. And what we found, we were always able to get them better price than they could get as individuals. There was no doubt about that. That was very straightforward. Sometimes we could get access to better product, but rarely, if ever, could we ever get access to better customer experience. And yet, consumers joined these communities in their droves. At its peak, we had 330 different communities. Wow. We had 1 million different members, and we introduced to I think 31 different insurers. And these consumers were like very happily joining the communities, engaging with other people in that same space, clicking through and buying the underlying insurance offering, and then discovering that that when they wanted to claim or to renew or to complain, and they tried to do it with us, that we weren't the insurer. They kind of naively thought that we were the insurer, even though they had a policy in front of them in digital form that had somebody else's brand name on the top of it and probably the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And so we discovered that really the brand of these big scale insurers was for nothing. They were spending millions and millions brand building, and no one cared.
Yeah.
It was really the touch points of where people engaged that determined how they behaved, and not what the underlying capability was.
And what lines of business were you looking at the time?
Oh, wow. Like literally anything from pets to motor to niche households, travel, cyclists. We did personal accident insurance for kids who played rugby. Okay. They're really, really properly niche stuff.
Yeah. But you can see where community comes into that, actually.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. It was a really big communal thing, and people really liked it. They engaged with each other because they had something fundamental in common, which wasn't about insurance, right? It was about the item or the thing or the life that they were looking to look after.
Yeah.
And we just facilitated that.
So how do you transition then?
So having discovered that the underlying brand wasn't important, and that people still tried to renew or buy, claim or complain to us, we felt that we had to do more, and also knowing that we couldn't do anything over customer experience. So we were letting people down. I mean, it was very clear. So over a series of moves over 2015 and 2016, we went from being this digital broker to being what's now called an insurance provider. And we didn't pick pet because that was our end game. We picked pet because that was a stepping point. And we ranked all these 330 communities in terms of customer engagement. Pets, everything in and around the pet space came top. Then came niche travel, then small business, then cyclists, and like a long tail after that. And that was our product rollout agenda. That was what we were going to do. So we started with pets. We outbound messaged our 120,000 pet owners with our pet members with a very simple question of, if they could design their own perfect pet insurance policy, what would it look like? And amazingly, we got 40,000 responses.
Wow.
It was really, which talks a lot to the level of engagement and the level of commitment people had to their space, and how much they saw us as being their partner in this.
Yeah.
And I mean, the unfortunate thing was that we gave them free form responses, and collating all of that was not a small task.
Yeah.
But by the end of the summer of 2016, we had worked out that we were going to launch 7 brand new products that had never existed in the marketplace before, to address the pain points that we heard back. And instead of then launching it, we then decided to take the opportunity to completely reimagine the entire customer experience, so that when we did launch in February 2017, nearly 6 months later, there was nothing about the journey that bore any relation at all to anything that anyone would have seen. No tick boxes. There were no kind of like lines to complete question sets in.
Yeah.
And we thought, right, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And we did exactly the same thing in January of 2018 for niche travel.
Mm-hmm.
Completely reimagined the product set, completely reimagined the customer journey. And then did the same thing again in April of 2018 for small business.
And your claims journey was, at least in pet, was markedly different from anything that was out there, for, as an observer of it.
And still is.
There's others who talk about it. So from a marketing standpoint, it feels like there's more parity, but in practice, actually, it's still quite different.
Completely. It's completely different. So, I mean, if we fast forward, do you want me to fast forward?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I'll finish the story for 1 second, and then we'll fast forward. So we get to the end of 2018, we've got these 3 product sets. We're about to do a whole pile more, and we're a small business, and we can't cope with the growth in pets, let alone the travel or the small business stuff.
Yeah.
So we took the decision to shut down the travel and the small business. And at the same time, in a kind of very startup-ish, aspirational, naive way, to aspire to become the world's leading pet insurer.
Yeah.
You can't be the world's leading anything from just one country. And that took us into Sweden 8 months later in July of 2019, and then into the US in March of last year.
Why was Sweden the next country?
It's a great question. It's a question I get asked often, because everyone goes, really? Sweden? Why? And the answer
it's just, it's not the second market.
Right. It's a small country, which I think is why most people say, right, really, if you're going to do a second country, why would you do Sweden?
Yeah.
And the answer is that pet insurance had been invented in Sweden in the 1890s.
Oh, wow.
It was by some significant margin, and still is, the most sophisticated pet insurance marketplace in the world.
Okay.
60% of Swedes insure their pets. And,
now I get it.
And we felt that if we were going to be the world's leading pet insurer, we had to go to the toughest market and learn everything we possibly could, so that when we went elsewhere, we could bring all those learnings across.
Yeah.
And in fact, what we discovered is that because there were only 5 players in Sweden, actually Sweden hadn't been that innovative. So we were able to bring some of the things that we had created in the UK to Sweden. We learned loads of stuff in Sweden, right? Make no mistake, we learned loads of things and brought those back to the UK to improve our offering in the UK. And both consumers in both marketplaces benefited as a result of that. And then we did the same thing all over again in the US last year, where when we brought capability to the US, we will bring it from a position of extreme knowledge and experience, and not just as a startup.
Yeah. You were bought by Many, you changed to ManyPets, and did that coincide with this focusing in on, look, pet is actually a big enough thing?
So bought by Many is, hopefully now I've explained our history, it explains why we were called Bought by Many.
Yes.
The name Bought by Many says nothing at all about what we do now.
Yeah.
And that itself wouldn't be a deal breaker, because there's loads of businesses out there that have got nothing at all to do with, their name's got to do with Apple, right? Google, like these words mean nothing in the context of what these businesses do. But Bought by Many is A, long, B, the words don't work in many languages, certainly not in Swedish. And we're competing in a marketplace where actually the name really does have to resonate, and it has to be memorable, and people have to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because referral is a really important part of our business model. I've got a great customer experience I want to tell you about. I've got to remember who that's with to be able to tell you.
Right.
So we moved the Swedish business. We launched as Bought by Many, but we very quickly moved it to ManyPets, and we launched in the US as ManyPets. So the UK was only playing catch up when we changed a few weeks ago.
Okay. Oh, is that recent?
Yeah, 30th of March.
Yeah. Well, you had some brand equity in the UK, but as you showed from your early experience, people don't often know who the carrier is. So it has.
No, and actually, we were hearing from customers that they knew us, they liked us, but they really couldn't remember our name.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that takes humility, humbleness around the name to see that.
Nothing about humility or humbleness, just like aspiration, I think.
So I mentioned the claims journey.
Yep.
How, was that, and maybe it's worth saying what that looks like, but was that defined by some of the feedback that you got from the customers when you announced this 40,000?
So when we launched, we had a completely online claims experience, which was not seen anywhere. UK, Sweden, it had not seen anywhere. And since then, the benefit of scale is that you have this colossal ability to invest in tech. And we are absolutely a tech-driven business where data and tech enables us to deliver genuinely compelling customer experiences. But that's not how we talk about ourselves. We talk about ourselves as a business that delivers a compelling customer experience. How we do it is of no interest to any consumer at all. Yeah. So all they want is, if they file a claim, they want it paid. Mm-hmm. Right. So right now we're paying 97% of all claims submitted. And a very significant proportion of those are completely automated, no human involvement at all. So that you file the claim either in the vet itself, or the vet files the claim, and the money arrives in your account, not instantaneously, but very, very quickly.
Very close to it, yeah. It's not what people think of when they think of their claim experience in insurance, where it's expected it's going to be adversarial and difficult. And
right. And the best way to think about that is that our net promoter score in the UK, where we've got the biggest depth of data, has never been below 70, and that's across all customer touch points. The subset of that is post claims last month was 84.
Wow.
And that's not because we haven't got any room for improvement. I mean, I promise you we've got lots of room for improvement.
Sure.
But it's because the expectation of consumers is so low, it does not take a lot to surpass that.
Yeah, which is it's a shame.
Yes.
You're doing well because the bar is low, but the bar is moving up, there's no doubt. And especially in the pandemic, lots of people got pets, and their sense of what's acceptable or not from a digital journey or any customer journey moved pretty dramatically. Did you see an impact to your NPS through the pandemic?
So we saw some really interesting things in the pandemic that, like, I think this is another example of when you invest in tech, you don't know how you're going to benefit at times, but you know that consumers will benefit from it.
Yeah.
So pandemic arrives in March 2020, and it's business as usual for us. In fact, I mean, the only difference I will say is that I took almost certainly the hardest decision I've ever had to take in corporate life. And I asked all of our staff to go home before the British government asked us to. And so bearing in mind at the time we were not in the US, and we had staff in Sweden, but only a small number. And we, the following day, business as usual, completely business as usual, because as long as you got a laptop, like, nothing else really mattered.
Yeah.
And so we moved on as usual at that point. And what we discovered was that the vast majority of our competitors could not do that. Mm. And so they closed for new business because the regulator said to them, if you can't process claims, you can't make new sales.
Yeah.
Right? Of course we could. This made no difference. So we put a banner across our website that just said coronavirus ? Open for business as usual, click here.
Yeah.
Now, we did have a call center, but our call center phone number was only visible once you got through the quote and buy journey. We got a lot of negative publicity that people had to get a quote before they could talk to us. Oh. So we put our phone number on the homepage.
Yeah.
Coronavirus ? Open for business as usual, click here or call this number.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, literally unbelievable. And at the same time, we were also very worried about what the economics would do to our customer base. And so we took the opportunity to create from scratch a brand new offering specifically designed to be completely stripped down, so that it was the very, very bare minimum of what you would want as a responsible pet parent to ensure that were your pooch, your cat get ill, that they would be covered for critical issues. And we created that from scratch in 8 days. Yet another advantage of
while
tech.
being distributed. Your staff, it wasn't people all together in a conference room.
No.
Bashing it out.
Nobody was together.
And you expanded to the US while you
and
were.
And then a year later, we were in the US. We launched in March of 2021. We're now in 40 states. And our US business has been, colossally successful so far. Very, very early days, obviously. Very excited about the possibility, very excited about the potential. And I'm really excited about what we're doing there as well. We're bringing lots of new stuff that has not existed before.
And you did all that while everyone was working remotely. I do want to touch on, when you say excited about possibilities and all that, where do you see this all heading? For you, for your path to being the largest pet insurer in the world, but do you see changes in the kinds of things that you're enabling, the way that you're engaging with customers? That's
absolutely,
asking
100%.
and hearing back. And
so if you think about the story I was telling you, right? So March 21, we launched in the US. Fast forward to October of 21, and we just insured our 500,000th pet. And we're very, very rapidly en route to becoming the world's leading pet insurer. It's kind of happened, right? Like we had this aspiration nearly 3 years earlier, and suddenly we're getting there. Now, like all startups, you need a big, bold aspiration, right? Something that like shoots for the stars, and maybe you'll make it to the moon. And so we took the opportunity to think about what else we could aim for. And we alighted on this idea of becoming the world's leading pet health subscription business, where insurance is a critical part of that, for sure, but it's not the only part. So that took us down the route of offering something in the US that's called Wellness, which sits alongside insurance. A few other insurers offer it, but ours is designed specifically to connect with the insurance policy. It's not a standalone piece. You can only buy it if you've already bought the insurance offering. And so the intention is that if you walk into the vet, whatever happens to your pet, you claim, and the answer is yes. And so we will be bringing that to the UK shortly. In the UK, we bought a flea and worming treatment business just before Christmas a few months ago, which enables us to deliver to customers flea and worming treatment through their mail. Very convenient, much cheaper than getting it from vets, much better way to look after your pet, because it happens, right? It arrives, and ours arrived through our mail today. Right, and that means I've got to go do it rather than having to remember to take our dog to the vet to have the treatment. And that gives us a physical connection to our customer base that has never existed in insurance before. Right? So the possibilities of what we could do with that are really quite significant.
It reminds me of what Beam Dental is doing. I don't know if you've followed them at all. Dental insurer, but they have a smart connected toothbrush. There's a subscription for toothpaste and floss and all that, and replacement heads, and it's all intertwined. It is interesting. So thinking, we talk about this proactively, trying to avoid the claims before they happen, but exactly what you're describing. If someone's not on top of those things, then there's a much bigger vet bill. And
we published some data that shows that healthy pets live for longer, right? Like, who doesn't want that? Right. So, so we talk about many more moments, right? Using this word many, right? Because we want to give our customers, our pet parents, the ability to have as much time with their pets as is possible. We want to facilitate that process, but we want them to enjoy it. And we see that as our role in life, to make the world a better place for pets and their parents. And if we can do that in a way that is seamless and straightforward and easy to engage with, then that works.
And one more question for you, because I know we're tight on time, but thinking about the customer experience, and you said, 84 NPS, but there's still, it's not that there aren't more things for us to do better. What do you think in the industry? Are there burning platforms that we're not really addressing, that from a customer standpoint, we're still failing?
In the insurance space? Are you talking about in general, kind of from an insurance perspective?
Yes.
I think that one of the things that we have been trying repeatedly to address is this belief that insurers know what consumers want, and giving it to them, or in fact thrusting it upon them more likely.
Yeah.
As opposed to allowing people to work out for themselves what they want. Now, clearly, doing this by customer survey is not something that we can do every day of the week, because it would take a huge amount of time and probably wouldn't facilitate the right answer. But creating optionality and giving people flexibility and enabling them to change and change frequently, which is something that does not exist in the insurance space. It's very much in our agenda.
Yeah.
And enabling them to scale up, scale down. And one of the things that we launched right at the outset, which was highly unusual, was the ability for consumers to cancel with no penalty. If you don't want our insurance policy, why would I want to charge you for something you don't want? I mean, this just seems insane. Right? And yet insurers find it very hard to let people cancel. Something that's very prevalent in the UK is that if you can pay 100% of your premium up front, but if you pay monthly, we'll charge you interest for that.
Yeah.
I don't get that. The risk is monthly. My cost base is monthly.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't want my policy and you want to cancel it, I'm not going to incur any cost next month.
Yeah. And you're not recognizing the revenue except monthly. So actually there's no real hit.
So why wouldn't I just align these things?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the answer to the question you were looking for, but it is important for me and for us to think hard about how can we let people make the decisions that they want to make, rather than to make the decisions that we want them to make.
Yeah. Well, I think we're so constrained by, we couldn't do what they want, so we better not ask.
Yeah. Or we've never been able to do what
we've never been able to. Right. Yeah. When you say you couldn't, not with that attitude. So you're going into it like that. Well, look, we could talk much longer. I got a policy to move, although I can't cancel my pet policy. I tried to, so I'll have to catch on renewal. But it's great to connect with you and share a little bit of your story with everyone.
Bryan, very nice to meet you too.
Thank you to Steve for coming on and sharing a bit about the journey before and during, and looking forward for building ManyPets out. It's really interesting that, no background in insurance, but sort of tangentially. And of course, as an actuary, he understood so much about it. But to see that need for people to come together and protect themselves, share information, and thinking about the community side of it is really an interesting genesis for the whole thing, and how that led them to pet. I'm not surprised when you start putting people together in communities that it was the pet owners and pet related things that shot to the top. And, it's great to see how they have progressed since there. Best of luck to the team at ManyPets as they build out in the US and look at other markets, new products. And obviously, if you didn't pick it up from Steve, they listen to people, they seek that feedback, and they try to make changes. So that helps us all push and see different ways to do things. I think that's the big takeaway for all of us to bring into our own businesses. So thank you to Steve for sharing all that. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. I hope that this was valuable. Of course, you can always rate and review the show. It's a great way to get your voice heard. I care about what you have to say, good or bad. I want to hear it. So you can do that on your favorite podcast platform where you're listening to this, or if you're on YouTube, drop a comment, drop a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. It helps me do better. It helps the show do better. And it's really important to keep putting this out in a way that you care about. And the only way I know that is when you share your feedback. So please do that. Share your feedback, share the show with people that you know in the space that you think would be interested. And I will see you back next time. Thanks, everyone.